Emily's phone buzzed just as she zipped up her coat and grabbed her lunch. It was a message from Sophie, her old college roommate, who had a way of appearing just when Emily needed a reminder of who she used to be. Hiking Maple Ridge this weekend. Me, Aaron, a couple others. You should come. You need this. We'll be there. Emily read the message twice. Maple Ridge. She hadn't been there in years. It used to be their favorite trail back in college, before life happened, before love got complicated. Before she got married, she looked over at the sink where Daniel's coffee cup still sat, untouched. He'd left early again. No note, no kiss. No explanation. That was the new normal. His late nights at work had turned into weekends away. His excuses had become patterns. And Emily had stopped asking questions a while ago. She wasn't sure if the silence was worse than the truth. But Maple Ridge, that was something else. Something from before everything had changed. She stared at the message for a long moment, then typed out a simple reply. I'll come. She didn't mention the trip to Daniel when he got home that night. She didn't need to. He barely noticed she was there. They sat in the same room, ate the same dinner, and said very little. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even coldness. It was distance, quiet and steady, like the kind you don't notice until it's too far to cross. When Saturday came, Emily pulled on her hiking boots and a jacket, packed a small backpack, and left the house just after sunrise. The sky was soft with early light, the trees dressed in the last colors of fall. The air smelled like change, like something was ending, or maybe about to begin. She reached the Maple Ridge trailhead just after 8 a.m. A few cars were already there. She parked, stepped out, and looked around. They were already waiting for her. Sophie gave her a quick hug, warm and familiar. Her fiancé stood nearby, adjusting his gloves. And then there was Aaron Dot. He was standing off to the side, sipping coffee from a metal thermos, looking out toward the trail like he was remembering something too. He hadn't changed much. His hair was shorter, his eyes a little more tired, but his smile when he turned to see her was the same. Soft, real, and just a little sad. Emily walked up, unsure of what to say. He handed her the thermos without a word. Cinnamon coffee. Her favorite. She hadn't had it in years, I remembered. He said with a small smile. She smiled back, heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. The group started the hike. Maple Ridge was just as she remembered, quiet trails, winding paths, and trees that stretched high enough to make you forget the world below. Sophie and her fiancé moved ahead, talking and laughing. Emily found herself walking beside Aaron, their steps matching easily, like muscle memory. For a while, they said nothing, but the silence between them wasn't awkward. It felt familiar, like something unspoken was hanging in the air, waiting for the right moment. "How have you been?" he asked eventually. She hesitated. "Busy, tired, married," she added, more quietly. He nodded. "I know." She glanced over at him. He gave a slight shrug. "Still single? Still hiking? Still thinking about things I probably shouldn't?" She didn't ask what he meant. They reached a small clearing about halfway up the trail, where the trees opened just enough for the sun to spill in. The group paused to drink water and catch their breath. Emily sat on a log, pulling her jacket tighter. Aaron sat beside her, not too close, not too far. "You look different," he said softly. "How so?" "Like you're carrying something heavy." Emily didn't look at him. "Maybe I am." He didn't press her. He never had. That was one of the things she had always liked about Aaron. He listened. But he didn't push. Back in college, they had been close. Everyone had seen it. There were late-night talks, long walks home, inside jokes, quiet looks. But nothing had ever happened. Emily had fallen for Daniel during senior year, and Aaron had quietly stepped back. It had always felt like a door she never opened. Now, sitting there beside him years later, she wondered what would have happened if she had. They started walking again. And as they climbed higher, the conversation came easier. Memories, small jokes. The kind of talk that makes you feel more like yourself than you've felt in years. At one point, their hands brushed, and neither of them moved away. When they reached the top, the view was quiet and stunning. Rolling hills, trees painted gold and red, a silence that wrapped around them like a blanket. Emily stood at the edge, staring out. Aaron stepped beside her. "Why did you really come?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Because I wanted to remember who I was before I forgot." He didn't say anything, just nodded like he understood, and he did. The others took pictures, laughed, and ate snacks, but Emily stayed there next to Aaron, feeling the weight of her life back home pressing gently against her heart. She knew she hadn't done anything wrong. Not yet, but something had shifted. A truth had arrived quietly, without asking permission, as they prepared to head back down the trail. Emily glanced at Aaron. He was waiting, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel the urge to run to climb up. Maple Ridge continued. The path narrowed in places, branches brushing shoulders, boots crunching against fallen leaves. The wind picked up, soft but steady, carrying that sharpness that told you winter wasn't far. Emily tucked her hands into her jacket pockets, walking just behind Aaron now. Sophie and her fiancé had gone ahead again, caught in their own world. Emily didn't mind. She liked the space. She liked the quiet. And most of all, she liked walking near Aaron. It wasn't planned. None of this was. She had come for the air, the change of scenery, the excuse to be somewhere her real life couldn't reach. But now, with every step, she felt a new kind of clarity. It wasn't about escape. It was about presence, being here in this exact moment. With someone who actually saw her, Aaron turned around once, offering her his hand over a steep patch. She took it. It was warm, steady, familiar. Not romantic. Not yet. Just ... comforting. She didn't let go right away. They didn't talk much as they climbed. The conversations were short. Comments about the trail, the trees, the chill in the air, but their silence said more than words could. There was an old rhythm between them, one that hadn't faded even after years apart. At the next rest stop, the flat rocky ledge overlooking the valley, the group paused. Sophie pulled out snacks and water, sitting with her fiancé under a pine tree. Emily sat on a low boulder, stretching her legs. Aaron sat beside her, unzipping his jacket halfway. "You okay?" he asked. Emily nodded. "Yeah, just thinking. About..." She glanced at him, then looked away. "Everything." Aaron stayed quiet. He didn't push. She liked that about him, how he made space for her thoughts without trying to fill the silence. After a moment, she added, "I'm not sure when things started feeling ... distant. At home, I mean. It wasn't one thing. It was slow, quiet. Like one day I just woke up and realized Daniel and I don't know each other anymore." Aaron looked down at his hands, nodding slowly. "That happens more than people think." She turned to him. "Did it happen to you?" "Yeah," he said. "A few years ago. I was with someone. Thought we had a future. But over time we stopped talking. I mean, we talked about groceries, schedules, work, but not really. I stayed longer than I should have. Thought that made me loyal. Turns out it just made me tired." Emily gave a soft laugh, one that sounded more like a sigh. "Yeah, that's exactly it. I'm tired." They sat like that for a while, listening to the wind in the trees. Below them, the valley stretched wide and endless, golden leaves fluttering like confetti on the breeze. Aaron shifted slightly. I don't want to make things complicated for you. You're not? I meant it when I said I remember who you were. You were light. Joy. The kind of person who made people feel like they mattered." Emily felt her throat tighten. "I don't feel like that anymore." "Koo," he said gently. "You still can." His voice was quiet, but it settled deep in her chest. She hadn't realized how much she'd miss being seen. Not for what she did or what she managed, but for who she was beneath the routine, beneath the marriage, beneath everything. Sophie called out from behind them, waving everyone to get ready. They had more trail to cover before reaching the summit. As they stood up, Aaron reached out and gently touched her shoulder, just for a second. No words, no expectations. Just a soft reminder that he was still there. They walked side by side now, matching each other's pace. The sun had risen higher, casting long shadows through the trees. The higher they climbed, the colder it got. But Emily felt something warm building inside her. Not passion, not guilt, just clarity. She hadn't done anything wrong. But she was seeing things clearly for the first time in a long while. They reached a narrow bridge crossing a small stream. Erin stepped aside, letting her go first. As she crossed, she felt the breeze hit her face. Sharp and honest, like the truth itself. On the other side. He caught up and said, "I used to imagine what it would have been like if we hadn't drifted apart after college." Emily looked over at him. "You did?" "Yeah, not obsessively, just ... Sometimes you were always the what-if person for me." She didn't know what to say to that. Her heart was racing, not from the hike, but from something deeper, a feeling that had been buried under years of routine and polite silence. They were nearing the summit now. The trees were thinning, opening up to sky and space. Sophie and her fiancés were already there, taking photos and laughing. Emily slowed as she reached the final stretch. Erin stayed behind her, quiet. When they reached the top, the view was breathtaking. Golden hills, deep forests, and sky that stretched forever. The wind was strong, but the moment was still. Emily walked to the edge and stood there, taking it in. Erin came up beside her. "Beautiful, isn't it?" She nodded, but she wasn't looking at the view. She was thinking about her life, about Daniel, about everything they used to have, and everything that had slowly faded. And she was thinking about Erin, about the way he had shown up. Gently, quietly, without asking for anything. He wasn't trying to pull her away from her life. He wasn't even asking her to choose. But being near him reminded her of the woman she used to be. The one who laughed easily, who spoke freely, who didn't apologize for wanting more. Erin turned toward her. "Why did you really come, Emily?" She took a breath. "Because I needed to feel something real, even for just one day." He didn't answer. He just looked at her, and the silence between them said everything. They stayed at the top a while longer, then began the descent. The way down was quieter, the kind of quiet that comes after something important has been felt. Even if no one says it out loud, Emily didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know if she was strong enough to fix what was broken back home or if it was even fixable. But she knew this. Something inside her had changed on that hike. And whatever came next, she wouldn't go back to pretending everything was fine. She had felt something real, and now she couldn't forget it. The hike down started with silence. The summit had left Emily full of questions, of feelings, of things she couldn't yet say. The sky had begun to shift, light turning soft as the afternoon stretched on. The wind followed them as they started their way back down Maple Ridge, but it wasn't cold anymore. Not really. She felt warm in a strange, quiet way. Not from the sun, but from the words that had passed between her and Erin. Without being spoken out loud, Sophie and her fiancé stayed ahead on the path, walking quickly, their laughter still floating back now and then. Emily and Erin lingered behind, not rushing. Their steps matched, just like they had earlier. But now, something between them felt different, closer. He didn't reach for her hand. She didn't look for his. But the space between them felt filled with understanding, deep and unspoken. They crossed the stream again, this time without talking. Just the sound of the water below, the wind in the leaves, and their steady footsteps on the dirt trail. Finally, Erin broke the silence. "Do you feel lighter now?" Emily gave a quiet smile. "No, not lighter, just clearer." He nodded like he understood. "Clarity is good, even when it's hard." She looked at him. "Do you think it's wrong to feel this way? To feel something when I'm not supposed to?" Erin didn't answer right away. He kicked a loose rock on the trail, watching it tumble. "I think it's more dangerous to pretend you don't feel anything at all." His words hit something inside her. She had been pretending for so long. Pretending she was okay. Pretending her marriage was still whole. Pretending her heart hadn't started aching for something else. Something softer, more honest. I didn't mean for this to happen, she said. I know, he replied. Neither did I. They kept walking. The sun filtered through the trees now, painting golden light across the path. It made everything look softer, more fragile, like it could all disappear at any moment. And maybe that's what made it feel so real. Emily took a breath. Aaron, if this were another life, if we were different people. He stopped walking and looked at her. Yeah, he said, finishing her thought without needing the rest. Me too. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't even a confession. It was just the truth. Shared between two people who had taken separate paths, but had somehow found their way back to the same trail, even if only for a day. She didn't know if that made it wrong. She only knew it made it real as they walked. Memories of Daniel filled her mind. Not the early days when love was new and exciting, but the recent days, the ones filled with missed dinners, distant eyes, short replies. She remembered how she used to wait up, hoping he'd come home early. How she used to dress up for date nights that never happened. How she used to scroll through old photos just to feel close to the version of him she had married. She wasn't angry. Not anymore. She was just tired of feeling like a ghost in her own house. Aaron looked at her again. You don't have to explain anything to me, Emily. I'm not here to pull you into anything. I just wanted you to know. If you ever wanted something different, something honest, you wouldn't have to face it alone. Her eyes burned a little, not from the wind, but from the weight of it all. He wasn't asking her to leave her marriage. He wasn't pushing. He was just offering something she hadn't had in a long time. Support. Gentle, respectful, and patient. I don't know what I want yet, she said honestly. That's okay, he replied. You don't have to know right now. They reached a quiet stretch of the trail where the trees opened up to a small overlook. Emily paused and sat down on a fallen log, brushing dirt from the edge. Aaron sat beside her. The view wasn't as grand as the summit, but it felt more personal. More still, she looked at him. I don't want to hurt anyone. I know you don't, he said. That's why you're still here, thinking about it, not just running toward something else. Emily looked down at her hands. I don't know how to go back to the way things were with Daniel. We don't talk. We don't fight. We don't even connect anymore. It's like living with a stranger who used to mean everything. You've told him any of this? Aaron asked. She shook her head. No, I think I was scared to hear that he feels the same. Aaron leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the valley below. Maybe that's where it starts. Saying it out loud. Even if it's hard. Even if nothing changes right away. Emily knew he was right. She had avoided the conversation because it felt like the beginning of an ending. But maybe it was the start of something else. Truth? Even if painful. They sat quietly for a few more minutes. "Okay." And then Aaron stood. "We should catch up with them," he said. Emily stood too. As they continued down the trail, she noticed how the light had shifted. Softer now, golden, touching everything with a kind of goodbye. She didn't speak again until they reached the parking lot. The others were already packing up, chatting and laughing like any other Saturday. Aaron turned to her, his voice low. "Whatever happens next, just be honest. With yourself first." She nodded, she got into her car, waved goodbye to Sophie, and then to Aaron. He didn't say anything else. He just smiled, a little sad, a little hopeful, then turned and walked away. As Emily drove off, mountains slowly disappeared in her rearview mirror. Her heart felt full and heavy at the same time. She didn't know what she was going to say to Daniel, or how to begin. But she knew this. She couldn't go back to pretending nothing had changed, because something had, and now. It couldn't be ignored. Emily drove home in silence. The road curved gently through the trees, the golden light of late afternoon slowly fading. Her hand stayed steady on the wheel, but her mind wasn't still. Everything from the hike, every word, every glance, every pause played in her head like a quiet song she didn't want to stop. She wasn't thinking about drama or decisions. She was thinking about truth, about how long she'd been carrying the weight of pretending. By the time she pulled into her driveway, the sun was nearly gone. The house looked the same, still familiar. And yet something in her felt different now. Not louder or braver, just clearer. She grabbed her bag and stepped inside. The smell of dinner wasn't in the air. No music, no TV, just silence. Then she heard the water running in the kitchen. Daniel was there, rinsing dishes, earbuds in. He didn't hear her come in. He looked up only when he turned off the tap. His eyes met hers briefly. "You're back," he said simply. "Yeah," Emily replied, taking off her shoes slowly. "How was your day?" "Busy," he said, drying his hands. "Yours?" She paused. "Different." He nodded once. "Good, that was it. No questions about the hike. No curiosity. No warmth." Emily walked to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and looked around. The room hadn't changed in years. Same photos on the wall. Same books on the nightstand. But the silence here was heavier than the woods. She could feel her chest tightening. Not with sadness, but with the quiet truth that this version of her life had stopped fitting a long time ago. Not because she wanted something new and exciting, but because something important had gone missing: connection. Later, they both got into bed. No conversation. No touch. Just two people lying side by side with miles of distance between them. The ceiling above seemed farther than the sky had felt earlier that day. She turned slightly, watching Daniel from the corner of her eye. He was scrolling his phone, no emotion on his face. She wanted to speak. She wanted to say, "Do you feel it too?" But the words stayed stuck behind fear. Fear that he'd say yes. Fear that he'd say no. Fear that he wouldn't say anything at all. So she said nothing, but inside her, everything had shifted. She remembered Aaron's words on the trail. If you ever wanted something different, something honest, you wouldn't have to face it alone. She hadn't messaged him since the hike ended. She hadn't even checked her phone. She didn't want to. Not yet. This moment, this return home, needed her full attention. She owed herself that. The next morning was quiet, just like always. Daniel left early again. No kiss goodbye. Not even a note. Emily sat at the kitchen table with her coffee, staring out the window. She wasn't angry. Strangely, she didn't feel sad either. Just ready? Ready to admit the truth to herself, even if she wasn't ready to say it out loud. Her marriage wasn't abusive. It wasn't toxic. But it had gone quiet in a way that felt like emotional sleep. No connection, no effort. Just a people keeping a routine. And now she had remembered what it felt like to feel again. To laugh without trying. To speak and be heard. To be seen. She opened her phone and scrolled through her recent messages. Aaron's name sat near the top. No new texts. She felt a strange mix of relief and gratitude. He hadn't pushed. He hadn't followed up. He had given her space, like he promised. That meant something. She opened the chat but didn't type. Anything, not yet. She didn't want to run from one silence into another. She wanted to make choices with her. Eyes open this time. That afternoon, Emily cleaned the living room. Not out of boredom, but out of the need to feel movement. She put away old mail, dusted the bookshelves, and threw out a pile of papers that hadn't mattered in years while sorting the coffee table drawer. She found an old photo, her and Daniel, from their honeymoon. They looked young, windblown, happy. She smiled, but it was a quiet smile. The kind you give to something you loved once, deeply, but don't recognize anymore. That evening, when Daniel came home, she was waiting in the kitchen. Calm, steady. He looked surprised to see her there. "Hey," he said, setting down his bag. "Hey," she replied. "Can we talk?" He hesitated now. "Yes, now." He sat across from her. The silence stretched. But she didn't rush. "I've been feeling like something's been wrong for a long time," she said gently. "Between us. And I think we've both been ignoring it." Daniel leaned back, arms crossed. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we've become strangers," she continued. "We don't talk, we don't connect, and we don't even try anymore." He didn't respond right away. Then he sighed. "I've noticed it too." There it was. The truth. She looked at him carefully. "Do you still want to fix it?" He paused, then looked down. "I don't know." That answer hurt more than a no. Emily nodded. She wasn't surprised, just sad. But only for a moment. I think we need time to figure out who we are now, she said. Separate from the routine, separate from the silence. Daniel didn't argue. He didn't beg. He just nodded, eyes tired. They didn't fight. There were no tears. Just two people finally admitting what had been true for a long time. That night, Emily slept in the guest room, not as punishment, but as the first step towards something honest in the quiet. She opened her phone one last time. Aaron's message history still sat there, waiting. She didn't message him, but she smiled. Not because she had someone waiting, but because she had found herself again. And that was enough for now. Emma had always loved visiting her best friend Rachel's house. It was warm, peaceful, and full of laughter. Rachel's family had become like a second home to her ever since high school. Even after college, they stayed close. During weekends or breaks, Emma would often drop by without even thinking. It felt that natural. Rachel's dad, Daniel, was kind and well-spoken. He was the quiet type, the kind who didn't say much but made people feel calm just by being there. He was in his early 50s, but he carried himself with strength and elegance. He was the kind of person who listened more than he spoke. And Emma respected that. At 26, Emma had just gone through a rough breakup. Her long-term boyfriend had left unexpectedly, and she found herself feeling lost. So when Rachel invited her to stay for a long weekend to relax and breathe real air again, Emma didn't think twice. A change of scenery sounded perfect. That Friday evening, Emma arrived at Rachel's family home, tucked away just outside Seattle. The house was surrounded by trees, and autumn had turned the leaves into warm golds and reds. Rachel greeted her with a hug and her usual energy, pulling her inside with stories already spilling out of her mouth. Inside, the air smelled like cinnamon and firewood. It was comforting, like childhood, but with more freedom. "Dad's upstairs in his studio," Rachel said, setting Emma's bag down. "He paints now." "Can you believe it?" Emma smiled. "Seriously?" "Yeah, it started as a hobby, but he's actually good. Go say hi. I'll start dinner." Emma nodded and headed up the narrow staircase. She remembered where the studio was. It used to be Rachel's old playroom. As she walked down the hall, she noticed the soft sound of music playing inside the studio. Something classical, calming. She gently pushed the door open. "Mr. Carter," she called softly. But when the door swung wider, she froze. Daniel was standing by the easel, shirtless, holding a brush, completely lost in thought as he painted. His back was to her, the window light casting long shadows across the room. There was nothing inappropriate. He was simply focused, unaware, but Emma suddenly felt like she had intruded on something private. He looked different. Not just like Rachel's dad, but like someone with depth. Someone carrying years of stories in his silence. Before she could back away, Daniel turned, startled. "Emma," he said, surprised, quickly reaching for his shirt. "I didn't hear you come in. I'm so sorry," Emma said quickly, looking away. "Rachel said you were up here. I didn't mean to walk in like that." He gave a small laugh, a little embarrassed, but not angry. "No harm done. I should have locked the door. Come in, it's been a while." Emma stepped inside carefully, still a little flustered. The room was filled with canvases, some finished, others half complete. Soft light spilled in from the windows, and the smell of paint hung in the air. "You're really doing this?" she asked, walking around a canvas that showed a misty landscape. "It keeps me sane," he said. "After Rachel's mom passed, I needed something that helped me feel grounded again." Emma nodded gently. She had forgotten how quietly he carried his grief. It had been a few years since his wife passed. She could still remember the quiet sadness in the house during that time. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Thank you," Daniel replied, then smiled. "I'm glad you're here. Rachel always lights up when you visit." Emma smiled too, the awkwardness fading. They talked for a few more minutes, mostly about art, music, and what Emma was doing now. For the first time in a while, she felt genuinely relaxed. That night, over dinner, everything felt familiar: laughter, stories, and the comfort of old friendships. But for Emma, something had shifted. She couldn't stop thinking about the studio, about the moment she walked in. Not because of what she saw, but how it made her feel. Daniel wasn't just Rachel's dad anymore. He was a person, layered, thoughtful, and unexpectedly creative. And for some reason, that thought stayed with her. The next morning, Rachel had to leave for a few hours to help a friend with a wedding event. Emma stayed behind, happy for a quiet morning. She poured coffee and wandered into the backyard with a blanket. She was surprised when Daniel joined her, carrying his own mug. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the wind through the trees. "You seem quieter than usual," he said gently. Emma smiled. "I think I'm still adjusting to not rushing around." He nodded. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" She looked at him. "It shows." "A little," he said, kind but honest. "But there's strength in that, too." Emma felt something tighten in her chest. She had heard a lot of sympathy lately, but not much understanding. Daniel's words felt real. They talked for almost an hour about heartbreak, healing, and finding purpose again. It wasn't flirtatious or inappropriate. It was human, grounded. But there was a connection, one neither of them could completely ignore. As Rachel returned later that day, Emma shook the feeling off. She was just emotional, vulnerable, grateful, maybe, for the kindness Daniel had shown her when she didn't expect it. But that night, as she lay in bed in the guest room, her mind wandered. Not toward her ex, not toward her broken plans, but toward the man in the studio, painting in the morning light. The morning after that quiet moment in the backyard, Emma woke earlier than usual. The house was still. She could hear birds outside and the low hum of the refrigerator downstairs. She pulled on a sweater and padded down to the kitchen, surprised to find Daniel already there. Pouring coffee? Couldn't sleep either. He asked with a small smile. Emma shook her head. "Just woke up early, I guess." He handed her a mug and gestured toward the porch. The air was cool, the trees gently swaying. They sat down in silence again, like old friends who didn't need to fill every moment with words. After a few minutes, Daniel finally spoke. "I never asked. Are you okay now? After everything that happened with your ex?" Emma looked down at her cup. "Some days, yes. Other days, not even close." "That's fair," he replied. It was comforting, his way of not offering fake encouragement, but simply being present. Emma felt like she could breathe when she talked to him, and that surprised her. They started talking more after that. Not in any formal way, just small moments throughout the weekend. Sometimes in the kitchen while Rachel was out. Other times when Daniel showed her his paintings. Emma began to feel drawn to the quiet wisdom in him. He didn't try to fix her pain, he listened, asked questions, and shared little pieces of his own life. She learned that he had stopped working full-time after his wife passed and focused instead on rediscovering parts of himself he'd long buried: art, music, books he used to love. Emma found herself admiring that. Rachel, of course, didn't notice anything unusual. To her, it was just her best friend spending time with her dad, two adults getting along. And that's all it was. But inside, Emma was starting to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Comfort, curiosity, and a spark of something she didn't quite understand yet. On Sunday afternoon, Rachel went to visit a cousin who lived nearby. Emma stayed behind to rest. Daniel was out in the garden fixing something with the sprinklers. When he came inside, Emma was sitting on the floor in the living room, sorting through an old box of records. "Wow," she said. "You've kept all of these." Daniel smiled and sat down next to her, brushing dirt off his hands. "Yeah, my wife and I used to collect them." Emma held up one of the covers. "This is actually really cool," he laughed. "You sound surprised." They started playing some of the records. Classic rock, a little jazz, even some old love songs. The room filled with music and easy laughter. It felt natural. To natural. At one point, a slow song came on, soft piano, warm vocals, and Daniel looked at her. "She used to love this one," he said, almost to himself. Emma looked over and saw something shift in his expression. Not sadness exactly, more like a soft ache. It made her heart tighten. "You miss her every day, don't you?" she asked. He nodded. "I do, but it doesn't mean I can't feel something again. I didn't think I ever would." But lately, he stopped himself. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She didn't move. She didn't speak. Daniel looked at her gently, but with a seriousness that made time slow for a moment. "I don't want to make things uncomfortable," he said quietly, "but I've felt a connection between us these past few days. Not something I planned, but it's there." Emma's hands felt cold against the coffee mug she was still holding. "I felt it too," she admitted, barely above a whisper. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was honest. Two people realizing something unexpected but real was forming between them. Nothing had happened. No lines had been crossed. But emotions were surfacing, and neither of them could deny it anymore. Daniel stood up after a moment. "You're Rachel's best friend," he said, more to himself than her. "And I'm me. This is complicated." Emma stood too. "I know, but we haven't done anything wrong." He nodded slowly. "Still, we have to be careful. I don't want to hurt her." "I don't either," Emma said. They didn't hug. They didn't touch. But something passed between them, an understanding. They needed space to think, to decide what came next. If anything even could. That evening, when Rachel returned, everything went back to normal. Or it looked that way. But Emma knew something had changed. Later, while lying in bed, she stared at the ceiling, heart pounding. She didn't know what to call what she was feeling. It wasn't just attraction. It was a deep emotional pull, like someone finally saw her for who she really was and understood her. Was it crazy? Maybe, but it didn't feel wrong. The next morning, Emma packed her bag to return to the city. Rachel hugged her at the door, promising to plan another weekend soon. Daniel walked her to her car. For a moment, they stood in the driveway, the wind cool around them. "I'll give you space," he said quietly. "I know this is a lot." Emma looked up at him. "I just need time." "I think we both do." He nodded. "Take care of yourself." "You too," she said. And then she got in the car and drove off, heart full, mind spinning, and unsure of where any of this was going. But she knew one thing for sure. Nothing was the same anymore. And maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. The drive back to the city was quiet. Emma kept the music low, but her thoughts were loud. She replayed every moment from the weekend, the morning coffees, the soft conversations, the unexpected connection with Daniel. It had all felt so natural. To Natural Dot back in her apartment, life picked up again. Work emails, errands, friends asking how her weekend went. She kept things vague when Rachel texted her, said it was relaxing, peaceful, just what she needed. That wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either. What do you say when you start seeing someone in a completely new light? Someone you weren't supposed to feel anything for? Emma didn't reach out to Daniel right away. She needed space to think. But space didn't help her forget. Instead, she found herself wondering about him. Not just what he was doing, but how he was feeling. Was he thinking about her too? One afternoon, about a week later, an email arrived. It was simple. "Hey Emma, I hope you're doing okay." No pressure to reply. Just wanted to say it was really good seeing you. "Take care, Daniel." She stared at it for a while before replying. "Hi, Daniel. I've been thinking about that weekend a lot. It really meant something to me too. Maybe too much. I don't know what this is, but I know I don't regret it." He responded a few hours later. "Neither do I, but I want to be careful." For Rachel. For you? They kept emailing for a few days. It was nothing romantic, not directly. They talked about art, music, their day-to-day lives. But between the lines, the emotional pull remained. Emma found herself smiling at his words, feeling a calm she hadn't felt in months. Then, unexpectedly, Rachel invited Emma back for a weekend. Just the two of them, she said. A girls' weekend at the house. Daniel would be around, but mostly doing his own thing. Emma hesitated. Part of her wanted to go. Part of her was afraid. But she said yes when she arrived. Everything looked the same. the trees, the porch, the familiar smell of cinnamon and coffee. Rachel hugged her at the door, already chatting about weekend plans. Daniel came out from the back hallway.com as always, smiling softly when he saw her. "Emma, good to see you again." "You too," she said, heart racing. That evening, the three of them had dinner. It felt normal, comfortable, maybe too comfortable. Because Emma started to notice how easily her eyes found Daniel across the table. And every now and then, she caught him looking back. After dinner, Rachel went upstairs to call a friend. Emma wandered outside to the back porch, needing air. A few minutes later, Daniel stepped out quietly. "I didn't expect you to say yes to coming back," he said. Emma looked out at the trees. "I didn't either. But here I am." They stood there in silence for a moment. "I've been trying to stay away from this feeling," he said carefully. "Trying to convince myself it's just timing, emotions, something that'll pass." "And has it?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not even close." Emma's breath caught. She looked at him, really looked and saw it again. That quiet sadness, that depth, but also something new. Hope. "I don't want to be reckless," he said. "But I also don't want to pretend anymore." "Neither do I," Emma said, voice barely a whisper. He stepped a little closer, then stopped himself. "Let's not rush," he said gently. "Let's take our time. Be honest. Keep this simple, whatever it is." Emma nodded. "Okay." The moment passed like a quiet promise. Nothing happened physically, but everything changed emotionally. They knew now that something real was growing between them. It wasn't infatuation. It was something deeper. Over the weekend, Emma and Rachel spent time together. Movies, long walks, talking late into the night. But in small, quiet windows, Emma would cross paths with Daniel. A shared glance in the hallway. A short chat in the kitchen. These were not just casual exchanges. They were quiet acknowledgments of something that couldn't be ignored anymore. On Sunday morning, before Emma left, she found Daniel in the backyard, working in the garden. He looked up as she approached. "I'll call you soon," she said, hands in her pockets. He smiled, brushing dirt off his gloves. "I'll be waiting." Back in the city, Emma felt a strange mix of emotions, calm, curiosity, and something dangerously close to joy. She didn't know where this would go. She wasn't even sure if it could go anywhere. But it felt good. It felt real. And after everything she had been through, that was enough for now. Back in the city, Emma tried to go on with life as usual. But something had shifted inside her. The quiet connection she'd shared with Daniel wasn't going away. She found herself thinking about their conversations. It's the way he looked at her, like he truly saw her, not just as Rachel's friend, but as a person with her own struggles, dreams, and pain. A week passed. Then another. They exchanged a few short messages, thoughtful, warm, and careful. But something unspoken lived between the lines. They were waiting. For clarity, for space, for the right moment. One Friday evening, Emma sat in her apartment, watching the rain tap against her windows. Her phone buzzed. It was Daniel. "I'll be in the city tomorrow. Visiting a gallery. No pressure, but if you'd like to join me, I'd like that." Emma stared at the message for a long time. It was simple. No expectations. But her heart said yes before her mind could catch up. She met him the next afternoon at a small art gallery tucked into a quiet street downtown. The moment she saw him, something inside her softened. He looked relaxed in a dark coat, hands in his pockets, smiling gently. "Hey," she said, trying not to overthink everything. "Hey," he replied. They walked through the gallery slowly, looking at the paintings. They didn't talk much at first. It wasn't awkward, it was peaceful. Like just being near each other was enough. Afterward, they stopped at a cafe nearby. Rain fell softly outside, and the cafe's warm light made the moment feel timeless. "I've missed this," Daniel said, stirring his coffee. Emma nodded. "Me too." He paused, watching her closely. "I've been thinking a lot. About us. About what this could mean and how it affects everything." "I know," she said. "Me too. I don't want to hide," he said. "But I also don't want to rush. I want to do this right if we do it at all." Emma looked at him, heart steady now. What would doing it right look like? Being honest, he said, with ourselves. With Rachel, eventually, taking it one day at a time. She thought about it. It made sense. There was no need for drama or rushing. What they had was growing quietly, like a seed taking root. It needed patience, not pressure. I'm willing, she said. If you are? His eyes softened. I am, and just like that, something settled between them. A quiet understanding that they were starting something real. Not defined by labels yet, not shaped by fear, but guided by something deeper. Respect, care, and emotional truth. Over the next few weeks, they met a few more times. They went to bookstores, walked through parks, shared long conversations about life, loss, and starting over. Each moment felt easy, grounded, and meaningful. Emma began to see Daniel not just as Rachel's dad, or as the man she'd unexpectedly connected with, but as someone who had been through storms and still found beauty in the small things. Daniel, on the other hand, admired Emma's quiet strength. She didn't chase attention or try to impress. She listened, laughed at his dry humor, and offered comfort without judgment. Of course, there were complications. The biggest one being Rachel. One evening, after weeks of carefully navigating their growing connection, Daniel brought it up. We can't keep this to ourselves forever, he said. As they walked along a quiet lake path, Emma nodded. I've been thinking about her too. I don't want her to feel betrayed, he said. But I also know we've done nothing wrong. She'll be surprised, Emma said. But I think if we're honest, she'll come around. They decided to wait just a little longer. Not to hide, but to make sure what they had was real and steady. They didn't want to go to Rachel with something half-formed or uncertain. Then one afternoon, Emma received a call. It was Rachel. You've seemed different lately, Rachel said. Happier. More at peace. Is something going on? Emma felt a knot form in her chest. She knew this was the moment. There is, Emma said quietly, and I want to tell you about it. In person. They met at a coffee shop the next morning. Rachel listened carefully as Emma spoke. Not fast, not nervous, just honest. She told her how things had unfolded naturally, how it was unexpected, and how she had never planned it. At first, Rachel was silent, shocked. But she wasn't angry. She just looked at Emma wide-eyed. My dad? She asked softly. Emma nodded. Yes, but I promise you it's not what you might think. We've been careful, respectful, we just connected. Rachel looked down at her coffee, then back at her. You're the first person who's made him light up in years. Emma's heart skipped. Rachel sighed. I don't know how to feel about it. It's weird, I won't lie. But if you're both happy, I won't stand in the way. Emma reached across the table and took her hand. I care about you too much to ever hurt you. Rachel squeezed her hand. Just don't make me call you Mom, okay? They both laughed, and just like that, the air felt lighter. After that day, everything became easier. Emma and Daniel no longer had to tiptoe around what they were building. It still moved slowly, but with more confidence now. More freedom. There were still challenges, people judged, people questioned. But they held on to each other through it. Because at the heart of it all was something simple and pure. To people who found connection at an unexpected time, and chose to honor it with honesty and care. Months later, Emma stood in Daniel's studio watching him finish a new painting. It was soft, full of light and quiet emotion. He looked at her and smiled. You've changed my life, you know? She smiled back. You changed mine too. Back. And as the morning sun poured through the window, they stood there not needing promises or declarations. Just grateful to have found something real in a world that often moves too fast to notice.